Hi friends, welcome back to Three Barrow Farm. Well, I'm out here in my garden on a Saturday morning, early in the morning, because it's going to rain later today. It's actually expected to rain around lunchtime onwards, but I'm hoping that it holds off until a bit later. And as you can see, I'm holding some of my really big tomato plants that I have raised from seed. So these ones I planted in August and they are quite big. They're not as big as some years. I found that this year is a little bit cooler and the sun hasn't been out as much. So they're not as giant as they were in previous years, but they're doing really well despite that. So I've got a ripple yellow currant in my right hand here. And I've got a pink bumblebee tomato in my left hand here. And I've got some other varieties here too. This one is another pink bumblebee, so it hasn't grown as big as the other one. So I'm not sure why this one's growing better than this one here, but they were planted at the same time. So it's very interesting to see how one seed can grow much more vigorous than another seed. I've got a red and black tomato here and a rainbow beefsteak one here. Now they're sharing a pot, so they're a little bit smaller, but I do find that the tomato plants that grow the biggest tomatoes, they are always a bit smaller. The ones that grow the cherry tomatoes, however, they are a lot more vigorous than the ones that grow the larger tomatoes. Once these get in the ground though, and particularly next month and December, they will take off. And I've also got a legend tomato as well. I don't remember growing these last year, I think because they got killed by the frost. I've also got a red fig tomato as well. I've got loads more inside, but I've brought these ones out because I'm going to experiment with planting them out now. So I have been putting these tomatoes outside during the day. They have been hardening off. So I've been putting them out each day so they can acclimatize to the weather outside. It's generally not as warm outside as it is inside. However, things are reversing now that we're getting warmer weather some days, and we're going to have some really warm days coming up, some 27-degree days, which is really nice, and these tomatoes are going to love that. It's a lot cooler out here this morning than I was expecting, so I've got a cup of tea out here to try and warm me up. It's definitely warming up my fingers, but it's actually quite pleasant. It's not too cold where, you need to be wearing all of the woolen layers like we were just only a month ago. Now, I feel a little bit like I'm behind in the tomato planting, but after last year, where I lost a lot of my tomato plants to a late frost, I can't quite recall when the frost was. It was either late October or in November. I have a feeling it was in October. Sometimes I plant my tomato plants out at the beginning of October under frost cloth. And this particular night, I was extremely tired. I was actually almost coming down with something. So I just went straight to bed and I forgot to cover my plants with the frost cloth. And so I lost a heap of tomato plants. So this year I haven't been rushing to get my tomatoes out into the garden. Now I know in Melbourne that the day for planting tomatoes is Cup Day. So that's generally the first weekend of November. So that will be next weekend. However, to get a head start, I normally plant my tomatoes out earlier than the first week of November, and I protect them. And this way, sometimes I get tomatoes in December. A couple of years ago, I got my first tomato on Christmas Eve. That was very exciting, but this is not my aim this year. My aim is not to try and get tomatoes earlier. It is just to get a big crop like I normally do to preserve. I would love to have tomatoes earlier, but with the rate of the frosts coming this year, I've just been watching them and I've been noting that there have been far too many frosty nights for me to plant out my tomatoes earlier in October. So I've waited till now, and I'm going to jump the bullet and get some in with the hopes that I will have some tomatoes to eat in January onwards. So we live on 42 acres here, and I have a really big vegetable garden that is just about to get even bigger in the next coming years, which is hugely exciting for me. And we like to try and grow most of our food. In summertime, we try not to buy any fruit or veg. Sometimes we do end up buying fruit. For example, we don't grow bananas here, so I'm really happy to buy bananas from up north in Queensland. And we're not striving to be 100% self-sufficient. I believe in community and sharing the load. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to try and grow all of my food. But one thing that we do like to grow and that we don't purchase outside of the growing season is tomatoes. There is nothing like homegrown tomatoes. I cannot purchase a tomato from the supermarket or even from our fruit and veg shop. They just don't taste the same at all. So we wait every year for tomato season and we eat tomatoes in the season, fresh tomatoes. However, I do try to grow enough to bottle. So I bottle up a huge amount of tomatoes, and we still have tomatoes in bottles from last season's crop. So I'm hoping again to get enough to see us through winter and spring and then get to the next tomato harvest. So I'm going to be planting these tomatoes along this Rio wall that we have here. So we put this Rio up early on when we got here, and this is our 11th year now on our property. I just tie the tomatoes to the Rio and they hold them up really well. We also grow our pumpkins and rock melons and cucumbers up these Rio walls. These are fantastic. You get more out of your garden when you go vertical. So I'm going to be planting my tomatoes along here. Now I've already planted some tomatoes in this row. I've actually transplanted them from this row next to me where I spread some compost, and tomato seedlings have started coming up. So I'm not sure what variety these tomatoes are. They're probably cherry tomatoes because let's face it, at the end of the season, there are so many cherry tomatoes that I don't get to, and they all end up in the compost or going out to the chickens, and then tomatoes just come up all over the place. So they're doing really well. They've survived all of the frosts that we've had lately, and I'm hoping that these guys will do well right next to them. Now I've got a few tips when it comes to tomatoes. You want to try and plant your tomato plants deep into the soil. So I will be planting mine quite deep. I'll probably be taking off these leaves here. And what will happen is these little nodules that are on the tomato stem down here will start to sprout roots. So we will get extra roots when we plant them down deeper into the ground. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to prick out these little buds that are coming out between the leaf and the stem. So these are actually trying to produce more leaders, and we just want to have one leader. Sometimes we will end up with more than one leader, but what makes the plant really strong is just having one leader, and then it puts all its focus into the fruit when it starts to flower. So the same with this one here. I will take off all of these bottom branches. So I'll just pick them off like this. You can just cut them off with your nails and rub off any that are on the bottom. I mean, it doesn't matter if you leave some of those. And I'm going to bury it up to here. And then I'm also going to smudge out these ones in between the branches and the stem. So this one here, I can already see at the very top, this one has some flowers that are going to come out eventually. I'm probably going to pick off those flowers because what I want is for this plant to focus on growing. I want it to get to a really good size before it starts to fruit. So just like with fruit trees, how we pick off all of the fruit, all of the flowers in the first few years of a fruit tree's life, just so it can put its energy into getting thicker branches and being able to actually support those pieces of fruit. We want to do the same with the tomato. We want it to put its energy into growing, get to a good size. It's still going to continue to grow, so I might leave it until it gets to about here, and then I will allow it to fruit. And for me, when I've done this in the past, it just means that it puts more energy into that fruit once it's got to a really good size, and it can also hold that fruit as well. Plus, there's more likelihood of the flowers actually turning into fruit as well if we wait a little bit longer. We want it to be a bit warmer, we want the bees to be out, and we want the beneficial insects to be around as well. So they're my main tips: burying it lower into the soil, taking off those middle shoots between the stem and the branches, and taking off some of those first flower buds just so it can get a little bit stronger and bigger. Other things that I suggest that you do for your tomatoes are to make sure there's enough calcium in your soil. So I replenish the calcium every autumn and spring. I put dolomite and lime or gypsum into my soil so that I'm putting more calcium in there, because the plants, they like to take the calcium from the soil, so you want to replenish it. I also like to put some chicken manure down on my tomatoes. Tomatoes love chicken manure, so you can buy chicken manure or chicken pellets. I think the Rooster Booster pellets are great, but I like to use our fresh chicken manure we have on our farm. So I will start to put that into some of my compost bins over the autumn and then let it sit for the winter. And then I will put that compost onto the garden where my tomatoes are, and I'll know that there's heaps of chicken manure and all that nutrients in the compost. I do also sometimes throughout the spring and summer, I will pile up my chicken manure that I collect from the chicken coop, and then I will let it rot for a little bit, and then I'll pop it at the base of the plants, but not too close to the plants and not anywhere near the leaves, because it can still burn the leaves. So just be careful when you put down fresh chicken manure, it can burn your plants. So make sure you compost it or rot it down in some way. In autumn, I put chicken manure in this row where I'm planting my tomatoes. I planted my tomatoes in this row last year, as well as in another row in my other garden bed as well. And all that I have grown in this row is lettuce, basically. I've got some lettuces still going along here, which I'm still going to plant the tomatoes at the base, because eventually those lettuces will get cut out of the soil and then the tomatoes will take over. I've got some basil plants inside, which I will be putting out here eventually. I might put one plant out today and give it a go. But yeah, I'm going to get to planting these tomatoes and find my frost cloth so it's all ready and set up, and I will show you my setup once I have done it.